Hi, Dr. Murlock here. Going to subject you all to my awful paint skills. We are talking about tournaments. Um, it's a rapidly evolving front for Pump It Up in particular. I don't know about the other dance games. Um, Basically, a mix between the community growing at rapid paces, and that's causing players to get significantly better than we've ever seen before at paces we've never seen before. It's been actually crazy watching some of you all get good. Um, Mix that up with Phoenix fundamentally changing a lot of what we view as competitive within the game. You know, shifting from combo based to judgment based. I mean, combo actually still matters a significant amount, especially in higher levels of score. But still, like, it was a huge shift for measuring skill within the game, and you know, we've been iterating a lot over the last couple years, and some of it has been losing some of the value that there were in older Pump It Up events. So I kind of want to talk it through it because I've talked about this with like a dozen different people over the last month. Like it's been a pretty hot topic. So I kind of wanted to give some insight to those who have not been around in those conversations. Um, so philosophically, from the start, if we're looking at a competitive match, let's lay out a spectrum here, which is the spectrum of charts, is what I'm going to call it. So on one side you have player one, on the other side you have player two, and view this line as a representation of all of the charts in the game distributed based on how in favor they are for one player versus another. So the charts all the way to the left are more in favor for player one. Charts all the way to the right are more in favor of player two. Somewhere in here, there is this line. And what this line is the turning point of where anything to the left of this line is in favor of player one. Everything to the right of this line is in favor of player two. Very often when you have smaller tournaments, this kind of distribution here is not uncommon for the matches. Having like an 80% to 20% ratio is not uncommon. In larger events, we have ways to smooth it out, but at the high level of play, you still very often run into this. Like that's just how the gap that is between each player's skill is sometimes pretty dramatic. So historically, I mean like a decade or so ago, way back in the days before like a lot of the modern pump players have joined, which was around the Prime 2 Double X era, which is when the community kind of blew up more most recently. But like way back in the day, we had a system called pick random. P1 would pick any chart in the entire game. Player 2 would pick any chart in the entire game. When they inevitably came to a draw, unless one of them screwed up their pick or didn't know something about their opponent or just was so mismatched that there was nothing in the game that they could pick that, you know, the other person wouldn't beat them on, inevitably it would go to a random. And that was the tournament scene for a considerable amount of time. And if you look at what this looks like on our spectrum of charts, P1 would pick a chart over here. P2 would pick a chart over here. And the random chart would be literally anywhere. It could be there. It could be there. It could be there, which would give a close score, or it would be there. Statistically speaking, it's most likely to fall in P1's little range over here, but randomly, like it could just be another one that P2 is just really, really good at, which, you know, anyone who's kind of thinking on this is already noticing, like, wait a second, does that necessarily measure the better player? And it's an interesting problem space, defining what the better player is and who should win in a competitive match. So there's two ways to view it. There is the player 2 has 20%, is better at 20% of the charts. So they should have a 20% chance of winning. Right? The other perspective is that P1 is statistically by far the better player, so the match should be highlighting that. It should not necessarily be highlighting P2's statistical advantages. It should be highlighting how much overall better of a player of P1 or P1 is than P2. So in the former case, pick random is actually somewhat pretty good because in fact you could even do random. It's going to give a 20% chance towards P2 getting it based on what you get. What it's not really good at is if, from a competitive perspective, you are trying to measure, basically, you want to show off how P1 is overall the better player than P2. Well, how do you show off P1 is a better player than P2 overall? Is you want to, without just blatantly loading it in P1's favor, obviously, like, because otherwise you're in the same position if you loaded it towards P2. The way we do that is we shift charts towards the center line. We want charts to sort of be averaged in this area where both players are equally bad at the chart. And so the evolution after pick random that sort of went in that favor, and this was kind of spurred by, as I understand it, it got to the point where people were just picking come to me. The tournaments were being dominated by gimmicky charts, and then the random chart that would actually show the like potential matchup between the two players. You would get come to me, you would get final audition, miss us story, stuff like that. Which was not the greatest experience. You get a lot of walk-offs like that. Why would you waste energy on playing a chart that you know that you're about to get your ass handed to you on if you could save that energy for something else? So the shift was towards move towards protect, veto. So player 1 protects. Why does it keep doing this? Player 1 protects, player 2 protects, and then you veto. I guess it would be more like veto if we're lining it up with distributions. So you end up, you have a reduced set of charts, and I don't want to make that red or black. There we go. You end up with a reduced set of charts, and you still have the potential of having your personal specialization, your specialized skill set, your come to me, your end of the world, your twist of fate show up in here. Or for some people, not even gimmick stuff. Like, say you're really, really good at stamina. Like, really good. Like, I can name like 3 people in Bite that are going to kick ass on stamina but then struggle on technical stuff. So you have a chance of protecting your specialty and then being able to showcase that, while the vetoes are designed to whittle something down that's statistically more likely to be at this little, I'm so bad at drawing arrows here, but that's statistically more likely to be at this little center spot there. If we visualize it, if we randomly draw, I'm not good at random, but if we randomly draw the charts like this, P1's going to protect that, P2's going to protect that, then they're going to veto down to this, which is a significantly better distribution than this, something on the far extremes, and then something God knows where. So statistically, you kind of have a better of both worlds, where you can get some specialized play, but you still have a chart that is kind of closer to the middle ground. So what was the problem? Why aren't we doing that, right? We did it for a long time. This has been a great format. Honestly, I think like in many cases it still serves its purpose. Um, the problem is, and a lot of this had to do with lower level brackets. I think there's a different problem in high level play versus low level play. In low level play, what we were constantly hearing is people going into matches not necessarily feeling like, oh, I hope that I hope I can perform my best. I hope I can push myself. I hope I can play competitively. People were essentially saying like, oh, I hope Miss S story shows up in my card draw, um, and it seemed like a lot of people were kind of playing around the card draw being the thing that decided whether or not they win. There was still a lot of cases where someone would protect Twist of Fate, and then the other person would just walk off because if you don't know how to do Twist of Fate, why even compete on it? There was, ironically, one time someone protected Twist of Fate when they didn't know what it was, and I found that hilarious. But it was causing, in the lower ends of brackets, it caused all sorts of lopsided matches where just based on pure statistics of the card draw, you would either win or lose. In the upper end of the spectrums, it kind of had the same effect, but ultimately it was leading to some players to feel like they weren't getting as meaningful of matchups as they were hoping they were, as they would. So meaningful meaning like they don't want to be competing on this. They know who's going to win that. They want to be competing around here where there's sort of more of a like meaningful match. Like the results of those actually matter. That's not everyone. One second, I'm going to get more into like the downsides of shifting away from specialized play in a little bit, but like the loss of specialized play has had some negative impacts on these match qualities. So what we've done to solve both of these problems is we have increased the card draw size dramatically, and what this does is it decreases the chance that you get a card draw that looks like that, with those charts there or that. Like it's more likely to be even distributed. The other thing is we got rid of protects. So you're not going to end up with these outlier charts. When the card draw is more likely to be distributed like this, you're more likely to get, charts in this little region right here down the center. The part that like highlights the better player. Which is currently what the primary focus is there is a focus on highlighting who is overall the better player. So that's kind of the move that we've done. There's also a lot of effort put in with, instead of, you can craft the brackets such that instead of having this line over here, I'm going to try to erase that and fail. You can craft the brackets such that the matches are like this, so that you can have sort of a mix of things that both players are good at and a close match, so that the scores are going to be close and it's going to be on charts that actually are like meaningful for both people. But that's more, a lot of that comes from using pods to avoid the top versus bottom seed problem that head-to-head brackets use. A lot of that comes with making head-to-head brackets smaller. There's an idea for next year of, instead of making a smaller bracket, use a larger bracket but have deeper buys, so that like the gods in the bracket can be pushed a little bit further down and you don't have like Fafems versus me or something like that, but you could still technically have us in the same exact bracket. So there's a lot of ideas on how to do that and making it so that the matches are just better matched overall, so you don't end up with this 80%, 20% silliness in the first place, which then everyone is more or less happy. The problem, and the thing that's going to take more iteration, and the thing that I suspect is going to cause some pains this year, because we've already seen it at other events, is going to be the loss of specialized charts. So the fact that we're driving charts to be more in the center means that we've gone from pick random, letting you showcase the thing that you are really good at, right? The thing that's out here, right? Like, I want to go show the world that I can kick everyone's ass on a Hyung S22. I don't know, right? And it completely eliminates that. You will not see these charts. And for many people, that means that you don't see the gimmicky charts. You don't see the, I've heard people say that, like, all vetoes means no fun, which is sort of by design true, unless P1 and P2 are both equally good at the fun chart, right? Like, it is kind of, that is one of the huge downsides that we are seeing. One of the proposals that we had for this year, and I think we're going to still see all vetoes play out this year, but it's something that I would love to try out next year, if the cards play right, no pun intended, is instead of doing protect vetoes, do veto protect veto. So the first round, if you go in there and you see a chart and you're like, my experience is going to be fundamentally ruined by that chart existing, you can veto that. And then your opponent can do the same thing. And then you go in to picking. Oh, it keeps changing the colors. I hate paint. And you get Photoshop or something, be super fancy. And then from there, so you've eliminated the extreme outliers, right? Assuming that there's any extreme outliers. Statistically speaking, there could be multiple extreme outliers, but it's significantly less than there being one extreme outlier. So after those vetoes, you go in, you protect your shit, and then you veto the remaining down to one chart, right? So it's kind of a happy middle ground, meaning basically you can still eliminate the problem of being up there playing on something that both people know what the outcome is going to be, but like at the same time you then can get stuff that you're happy with playing, that you're feeling competitively good at. And then but they'll be closer. They're hypothetically, statistically speaking, not going to be as dramatic as pick random, or as some of the weirder protect veto pulls that we've seen. And then you still keep the larger card draw so that you have a much larger space to kind of work from. So that's where we're at. It's a difficult problem space. It's honestly like, it's one that I'm still adapting my perspective on, and I'm not. The more I talk to people, the more I realize that the community as a whole hasn't really aligned itself on how it feels about this. Even within pro players, you kind of get some different perspectives depending on who you're talking to about specialized play versus showing general skill sets. There's another interesting aspect to specialized play that one player was talking about, that when you enter into higher level charts, I'm talking like D25s and above, a lot of the charts look similar. There's a lot of different nuances to them that kind of make them different, but there's definitely a heavy emphasis on stamina and stamina bracket tech heavy charts. So there is sort of there's another perspective to consider, which is you lose when you go above about level 22. There's a lot of gimmicky, weird niche specializations you get in the 20s through 22 range that you will not get in 25s and above. So there is sort of the perspective to take in of, what do you do about that? If someone's really good at that stuff, how does that play into their representation of being an overall better player, right? Or once again, that perspective of like, if this range for someone is 21s and 22s, But like this is someone like 25s and 26s. Why shouldn't P2 have the option to compete on the 21s and 22s, right? There's the other perspective of that. If someone's really good at high level stuff but sucks at low level stuff, should they be able to play higher level stuff against other people in their bracket? And I mean like relatively good, right? Like if someone's capable of pulling a double A off on an S25 but is only getting S's on S20s, which, you know, I can speak from experience, stuff like that does happen. You know, should they be able to compete against higher level stuff? Like, you got to answer, it feels like no, but it's an interesting problem space to sort of think through. So this is food for thought. There's not really much to it. I'm hoping we see a lot of interesting and positive gains, especially for lower level players at Byte. And I keep saying lower level players. The level of lower level players has increased to what I used to view as God mode players. So like, when we say lower level players, we actually are talking about like the skill level of the community has gotten insanely big over the years. So, you know, we ran into this at Eclipse when we called lowers when it was like people playing 17s through 20s, which is like, that's not lowers. So anyways, yeah. So I hope this helps gain some perspective. It's an interesting conversation. If you want to contribute to this evolving and keeping on the right track, reach out and talk to me, talk to Jonathan, talk to the other Jonathan, Fung Poppy. If we have a feedback form go out, put your thoughts into that. Like, anyone who has been in a conversation with either me or the other, either of the Jonathans, me or the other Jonathan, can tell you that like we live for talking through this stuff. It's an interesting problem space. We love the feedback. And the feedback is what helps us keep on track versus kind of going off down on some tangent. Like, I can tell you honestly, before about a month ago, if someone told me that they wanted to see more specialized play in tournaments, I would have said, no, that's dumb. No one wants that. And honestly, like I've had 2 or 3 people sort of approach it from different perspectives to me, and it's been making me think more and more on the subject. So feedback is great. Reach out to us. Tell us how Byte goes for you. Tell us what worked for other events, what didn't work. There's all sorts of other crazy formats that help highlight things like specialized play that, you know, I would love to host more of. And yeah, most importantly, keep playing and keep coming to these events. So yeah, on that note, have a fantastic day. Murloc out.